Our world is louder and more connected than ever before. Yet there is a counterintuitive strength growing in the quiet corners of chosen solitude. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This is not a retreat of weakness, but a strategic withdrawal of immense power. This exploration uncovers the Stoic psychological principles that transform voluntary isolation from a sign of loneliness into a hallmark of profound mental fortitude. What if the strongest people are those who are not afraid of their own company? We will journey into concepts like the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind, the practice of cognitive detachment from the herd, and the empowering filter of the dichotomy of control. By the end, you will understand the psychological architecture that allows a strong mind to walk alone, not in bitterness, but in purposeful peace. We will uncover why solitude is the ultimate training ground for resilience, and how it unlocks a clarity that constant connection cannot provide. What does your own mind sound like when the world goes completely silent? The Stoics believed our greatest strength lies within a place they called the inner citadel. This is not a physical fortress of stone and mortar, but a mental sanctuary, a quiet room within your own consciousness. It is a space you can retreat to for reflection and strength, a place that remains utterly immune to the chaos and opinions of the outside world. Choosing isolation is not about running away from life. It is the deliberate act of walking through the gates of this inner citadel to reinforce its walls. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who spent years commanding legions on distant frontiers, constantly reminded himself of this practice. He wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, or in the mountains." But this is altogether uncharacteristic of a philosopher, since you can, whenever you please, retreat into yourself. Nowhere is there a retreat more peaceful or less troubled than in one's own soul. He was not dismissing the beauty of nature, but highlighting a more profound truth. The most reliable peace is not found in a specific location, but in a state of mind you can access anywhere. Consider a modern example, someone feeling overwhelmed by the constant pings of notifications and the pressure to curate a perfect online life decides on a digital detox. For a weekend, they turn off their phone, step away from all screens, and just exist with their own thoughts. At first, there might be an unsettling silence, a twitch of anxiety. But soon, the mental noise subsides. They start to hear their own voice again, separate from the crowd. They are not hiding from the world. They are actively fortifying their inner citadel, reminding themselves of who they are when no one is watching, liking, or commenting. So where is your inner citadel? It is that quiet space behind your eyes where your truest judgments and values reside. When was the last time you consciously stepped inside, closed the mental door, and simply listened to what you found there? How often do your actions stem from a fear of being different from the crowd? That quiet pressure to conform, to blend in, is a powerful psychological force. Stoicism offers a radical alternative, a practice known as cognitive detachment from the herd. This is not about hating people or becoming a recluse out of spite. It is the conscious decision to unhook your sense of self-worth and your core judgments from the ever-shifting opinions of the masses. You choose to stop outsourcing your inner compass. The Stoics prized one thing above all else in the pursuit of a good life, and that was virtue, or living in accordance with reason and nature. They understood that a mind chained to popular opinion can never be truly virtuous because it is always reacting, always seeking external validation rather than acting from its own principled core. This is precisely why a strong mind might choose periods of isolation. It is a strategic withdrawal to cleanse the palate of the soul, to remember what you truly value when no one is around to applaud or disapprove. The philosopher Epictetus, who was born a slave, had profound insight on this. He taught, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters." He was urging his students to let go of the need to be seen as smart or fashionable in the eyes of others. Do not be chained to popular opinion, even if it means sometimes seeming foolish to the crowd for sticking to your own principles. History provides a powerful example in the figure of Socrates. He was a man who deliberately stood apart from the popular currents of Athenian society. He questioned everything from what makes a good life to what constitutes justice, in a marketplace full of people who thought they already had the answers. His actions were not driven by a desire to be contrarian, but by a deep commitment to his own inner voice, his daemonion, which he listened to even when it led to his trial and death. He chose intellectual and moral isolation from the herd because he valued truth over social acceptance. So here is a challenge for you to consider in a quiet moment. Identify one belief you hold, one opinion you voice, or one habit you maintain, not because you have reasoned it through for yourself, but simply because it is the popular view in your social circle or in the culture at large. It does not have to be a grand political stance. It could be something as simple as the pressure to always be busy, or the belief that a certain kind of success is the only one that matters. What would it feel like to gently detach that one thread from the tapestry of popular opinion and examine it under the light of your own reason? The Stoic dichotomy of control separates all things into what is up to us and what is not. This simple, profound filter is the very mechanism that makes chosen isolation not an act of escape, but one of supreme focus. Think of it as a mental sieve. You pour the chaos of your daily life through it, and what remains are only the things that truly warrant your energy, your judgment, and your action. Everything else, the countless opinions of others, the outcomes of events, the past, the future, all of that falls away as noise. Epictetus, who began his life in chains, opened his famous handbook with this exact idea. He wrote, "Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing." This is the core, your character, your values, your efforts, these are your domain. The rest is not. When you internalize this filter, the very nature of solitude shifts. You are not hiding from what you cannot control. You are strategically withdrawing to pour all your resources into what you can. Imagine a person who feels immense pressure to attend every social gathering, fearing they will miss out or be seen as unfriendly. Yet they notice a pattern. These events are often filled with gossip and negativity, leaving them feeling drained and anxious for days. Applying the dichotomy, they realize the opinions and chatter of others are firmly outside their control. Their own peace of mind, however, is within it, so they make a conscious, quiet choice. They spend a Friday evening alone instead, reading a book that expands their mind or working on a personal project that aligns with their values. This is not anti-social, it is pro-sanity. It is the direct application of a Stoic filter, choosing to invest in the inner citadel rather than being a casualty of external chaos. This is the psychology behind the strong mind walking alone. It is not a path of loneliness but one of directed intention. So take a moment and bring this filter to your own life. Mentally list 3 things that cause you regular worry or anxiety. Now hold each one up to the light of the dichotomy. Is it truly within your power to change it, or is it an external event, another person's reaction, a future outcome? Seeing this distinction clearly is the first step toward a quieter, more powerful mind. Think of chosen solitude not as a prison, but as a gym for the mind. In a gym, you deliberately lift heavy weights not because you enjoy the strain, but to build a strength that serves you long after you leave. In the same way, spending time alone with your own thoughts is the fundamental workout for your emotional resilience. It is here, in the quiet, that you practice the Stoic art of being unmoved by the chaos you cannot control. When you remove the constant distractions of social validation and entertainment, you are left with the raw material of your own character. There is no one to perform for, no one to blame, and no external drama to absorb your attention. You are forced to confront your own anxieties, your boredom, and your restless impulses. And in that confrontation, you build the mental muscle to endure them without flinching. Seneca, who witnessed the volatility of imperial Rome, saw this process clearly. He wrote, "Without a ruler to go by, who'll know how far you should go? You need to set aside certain days for facing yourself without any distraction." He is not suggesting a life of permanent isolation. He is prescribing a regular practice, a scheduled session in the mental gym. This is where you test your own limits and discover your own capacity for calm. Consider the process of learning a complex skill, like playing a musical instrument. The real progress does not happen during the weekly lesson with the teacher. It happens in the solitary, often frustrating, daily hours of practice. It is in those alone sessions that you face your own mistakes, your impatience, and the temptation to quit. You are building the discipline to continue when no one is watching, and that very discipline becomes a form of self-reliance that extends far beyond the practice room. The ability to sit with difficulty without seeking an immediate escape is the bedrock of Stoic resilience. This week, I challenge you to one simple session in this gym. Carve out just 1 hour for intentional solitude. Turn off all screens, put away any distractions, and simply be with yourself. Do not plan the hour or try to make it productive. Just observe what happens. Notice the thoughts that arise, the itch to reach for your phone, the subtle anxieties that surface. Do not judge them, simply watch them. This is not an hour of doing nothing. It is an hour of building everything. Amor Fati is the Stoic art of not just accepting but loving everything that happens. This goes far beyond mere tolerance of difficulty. It is an active, wholehearted embrace of your entire path, including every setback, every quiet moment, and every instance where your journey diverges from the crowd. When you apply this profound love to your fate, the isolation that sometimes accompanies a principled life transforms. It is no longer a burden to be endured, but a necessary and cherished part of your unique story. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius constantly reinforced this mindset, writing in his private meditations, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Your challenges, your solitude, even your moments of doubt are all fuel for that inner fire. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic ideas, later captured this spirit perfectly with his own dictum. He said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." This is the ultimate psychological shift, where you stop fighting the current of your own life and learn to swim with it, even when it leads you away from the shore. Consider the story of a dedicated scientist working for years in a quiet laboratory on a theory that the mainstream academic community dismisses. The days are long, the funding is scarce, and the social invitations dwindle as they pour their energy into their work. They could see this isolation as a painful exile, but through the lens of Amor Fati, they learn to love this very solitude. They cherish the quiet focus it affords, the freedom from distracting debates, the deep, personal relationship they are building with their life's work. This isolation is not a sign they are wrong. It is the very condition that allows them to be right. So, bring this concept down to the ground of your own life. Look at one aspect of your current situation that feels difficult or lonely. Perhaps it is the quiet evenings spent building a new skill while others are out socializing, or the feeling of being misunderstood for a choice you have made. Can you find a way to not just accept that quiet, but to love it? Can you see it as the essential raw material, the specific fuel, for the person you are deliberately choosing to become? What if regularly contemplating loss could make you fearless? This is the heart of a powerful Stoic exercise known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic daydream, it is a psychological drill, a vaccination for the soul against the fear of losing what we hold dear. And this practice finds its most potent form in the quiet space of chosen solitude. The noise of the world makes it easy to avoid these thoughts, to constantly seek reassurance in externals. But in silence, you can face them head-on, not with dread, but with calm, deliberate reasoning. The goal is not to create anxiety, but to disarm it by familiarizing yourself with the very scenarios you fear most. By willingly imagining the loss of people, possessions, or status, you slowly strip those potential futures of their power to shock and destabilize you. You realize that your core character, would still remain. Seneca championed this mental rehearsal in his letters to his friend Lucilius. He advised, he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. He was not suggesting we live in constant fear of disaster. He was teaching us to inoculate our minds. By rehearsing misfortune in the safe theater of our own imagination, we build a resilience that ensures real-life setbacks cannot so easily overthrow our peace. The tranquility of solitude provides the perfect stage for this rehearsal. Imagine a simple practice. Sit quietly for just a few minutes and bring to mind something you deeply value, perhaps the company of a close friend or the comfort of your home. Now, gently and without panic, imagine your life without it. Do not dwell on the pain, but observe the thought. See yourself continuing on, finding new strengths, relying on your inner resources. You are not wishing for this loss. You are simply proving to yourself that your stability does not ultimately depend on any single external thing. This weakens the chains of attachment and liberates you from a specific kind of social fear, the fear of being left out or going without. So, in your next moment of quiet, try this brief exercise. Bring to mind a common social anxiety, perhaps the fear of saying the wrong thing at a gathering and being judged. Now play it out. Imagine it actually happens. You feel the initial sting of embarrassment, and then you watch as the moment passes. The world does not end. You return to the quiet strength of your inner citadel, unharmed. What do you discover about the true weight of that fear when you hold it in your hands, alone and in silence? Stoics teach that our judgments, not events themselves, cause our suffering. An event is just an event, a neutral fact. The emotional storm that follows, the anger, the anxiety, the hurt, these are not in the event. They are born the moment we attach a label, the instant we judge that something is bad or unfair or a personal attack. This is the critical space between what happens to us and our reaction to it, a space that constant noise and distraction often force us to skip entirely. Chosen isolation deliberately widens that space. It gives you the quiet room to catch your automatic judgments before you give them your full assent. The philosopher Epictetus, who understood the chains of the mind as well as any, put it with stunning clarity. He said, What disturbs people's minds is not events but their judgments on events. The email from your boss that seems curt, the friend who did not call, the rain that cancels your plans, none of these things have any inherent power to disturb you. The disturbance comes solely from the story you immediately tell yourself about them. In the stillness of solitude, you can learn to intercept that story. Imagine a person receives a brief, blunt email from a colleague. The initial automatic judgment is one of insult and anger. Feeling the heat rise, they do not fire back a reply. Instead, they close the laptop and go for a long walk alone, with no podcast in their ears, no phone in their hand. With each step, the initial judgment begins to loosen. In the quiet, other possibilities emerge. Perhaps the colleague was just rushed or stressed, or simply being direct without realizing how it sounded. The event, the email, has not changed, but the judgment about it has been suspended, examined, and ultimately softened. The suffering it caused simply evaporates. This is the profound mental clarity that solitude cultivates, the ability to see events for what they are, not for what our fearful, reactive minds initially insist they must be. Think back over the last day or two. Can you recall one small event, a minor frustration or a perceived slight, where your initial judgment was swift and certain? What might have happened if you had gifted yourself just 5 minutes of pure quiet to examine that judgment before you allowed it to become your truth? In a world shouting more, Stoicism whispers enough. This simple, radical shift is the psychological bedrock of finding profound peace in your own company. When you choose isolation, you are not just stepping away from people, you are stepping away from the endless, exhausting game of comparison. That game is fueled by a constant desire for more approval, more possessions, more proof that you are keeping up. Stoicism dismantles this entire engine of want. It teaches that true wealth has nothing to do with what you accumulate and everything to do with how little you need to be happy. Seneca, a man who experienced both immense wealth and forced poverty, saw this with absolute clarity. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Poverty, in the Stoic sense, is a state of mind, a bottomless hunger that no amount of external validation can ever fill. The person who walks alone by choice is not poor. They have simply stopped craving the currency of the crowd. Their wealth is an inner self-sufficiency that renders social competition meaningless. Consider the modern trend of minimalism. Someone looks around their home and sees not possessions but obligations. They see trinkets bought to impress, clothes worn to fit in, and a calendar filled with events they feel compelled to attend. So they begin to let it all go. They donate bags of clothes, clear their shelves, and intentionally decline invitations that drain their spirit. The immediate result is not deprivation, but a shocking sense of lightness. With fewer things to manage and fewer appearances to keep up, the mental noise quiets. They are no longer comparing their living room to a magazine spread or their social life to a highlight reel. This external simplicity creates an internal spaciousness, a room to breathe that is the very essence of contentment. The isolation they might experience is not a void. It is a field of freedom cleared of the weeds of wanting. So where in your own life is the whisper of more the loudest? Look at one single area, perhaps your spending habits or your social media consumption. What would it feel like to practice wanting just a little less in that one domain? To consciously decide that what you already have, who you already are, is truly enough. Some of the most important conversations you will ever have are with yourself. This is not a sign of loneliness, but the hallmark of a mind mature enough to be its own best counsel. The Stoics elevated this internal conversation into a disciplined practice, a form of self-dialogue, and journaling that transforms quiet moments into a workshop for wisdom. In solitude, you are not just thinking, you are actively coaching your own character. The most famous example of this is the private journal of Marcus Aurelius, a book we now know as the Meditations. It was never intended for publication. It was his personal manual, a series of reminders and conversations where he reasoned with himself, reinforced his principles, and steered his mind back to virtue when faced with frustration, flattery, or fear. He was not writing to impress an audience. He was engaging in the most honest dialogue possible with the one person who knew all his thoughts and struggles. The quiet of his quarters was the essential condition for this work. You cannot hear the subtle guidance of your own inner voice when the world is shouting in your ears. This nightly practice of self-examination is a way to process the raw material of your day. It is where you can take a frustrating interaction and dissect it with calm reason, asking yourself, what was within my control in that moment? What judgment did I make that caused my anger? How might I see this differently? This is not about dwelling on the past, but about learning from it so you can meet the next challenge with greater clarity and peace. The simple act of writing your thoughts down forces a clarity that fleeting mental chatter can never achieve. It externalizes the noise, allowing you to examine your own judgments from a slight distance, as if you were a wise friend offering counsel. So tonight, before you sleep, try this. Take a notebook and write down just one question you genuinely need to ask yourself. It does not have to be profound. It could be as simple as, why did that small comment bother me so much today? Or, what is one thing I am grateful for that I usually overlook? Then, in the quiet, listen for the answer that arises not from panic or pride, but from the calm, guiding voice you cultivate within. The need for constant approval is a cage. Stoic indifference is the key. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling, but about transferring the source of your self-worth from the fickle opinions of others to the solid ground of your own principled actions. When your sense of value is built on your character and your efforts, the applause and the criticism begin to lose their power to control you. You become free to act according to your own inner compass, even when that path leads you away from the crowd. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew the sting of being judged as a slave, offered a powerful mental framework for this. He advised, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. This is a profound reframing. It turns criticism from a personal attack into irrelevant noise, a simple reflection of the other person's limited perspective. Your task is not to manage their opinion, but to continue perfecting your own character, regardless of their commentary. Imagine an artist who works for years in a style that is currently out of fashion. The galleries are not interested, and the popular critics dismiss their work as irrelevant. They face a clear choice. They can change their art to chase trends and win approval, or they can continue to create from a place of deep personal truth, valuing the integrity of the work itself above its public reception. The artist who chooses the latter path is practicing Stoic indifference. Their studio becomes a sanctuary of self-validation. The act of creation is its own reward, and the silence from the outside world is not a judgment, but a space for deeper focus. This is the liberation that allows a strong mind to walk alone, not in defiance, but in quiet conviction. So here is a simple challenge for you today. Choose one small action to perform purely for yourself, with no intention of sharing it or seeking any external validation. It could be writing a poem no one will ever read, taking a walk simply to notice the light through the trees, or finally starting that project you have been postponing out of fear it will not be good enough. Perform this act with the sole intention of honoring your own standard. What do you notice about the quality of your focus and the peace in your mind when the audience disappears? Bring your attention entirely to the here and now. This single, simple instruction is the gateway to a profound Stoic power, a power that chosen isolation unlocks with startling clarity. When you step away from the crowd, you are not just leaving people behind. You are leaving behind the two great thieves of peace, the ghost of yesterday and the phantom of tomorrow. Solitude, by its very nature, strips away the endless distractions that allow us to avoid the one thing we truly ever possess, this present moment. Marcus Aurelius, in the quiet of his military tent, constantly returned to this anchor. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He was not dismissing planning or reflection. He was insisting that we stop borrowing trouble from a future that may never come and stop being haunted by a past we cannot change. Your life, your power, your ability to act with virtue exists only in the eternal now. The constant noise of society often serves as a buffer against this reality. We scroll through feeds filled with other people's pasts and futures. We engage in conversations that are often just rehearsals of old grievances or anxieties about what is next. In isolation, that buffer vanishes. You are left with the raw, immediate data of your own existence, the feel of the air on your skin, the sound of your own breathing, the quality of the light in the room. At first, this can feel unsettling, even boring. But that discomfort is the sign you are touching the very fabric of reality, the only domain where your will is truly free. A powerful way to practice this is through a mindful walk in nature, completely alone. Leave your phone behind. As you walk, do not let your mind race ahead to your destination or drift back to an earlier conversation. Instead, pour all of your awareness into your immediate senses. Notice the specific crunch of gravel under your feet. Observe the intricate pattern of veins on a leaf. Feel the subtle shift of temperature when you pass from sunlight into shade. Each step is its own complete event. In this practice, you are not just taking a walk. You are training your mind to inhabit its life as it is actually happening, moment by moment. So, wherever you are right now, I invite you to pause. Do not just listen to my words, but actively shift your focus. Name silently to yourself 3 things you are sensing in this exact moment: the weight of your body in your chair, the faint hum of a device in the room, the play of light and shadow on the wall. This is not an escape from life. This is the act of finally arriving in it. What if occasionally choosing discomfort is the secret to lasting comfort? The Stoics proposed a radical training method for the soul, a practice they called voluntary discomfort. This is the deliberate, temporary embrace of hardship, not as a punishment, but as a vaccine for the spirit. It inoculates you against the fear of future loss and builds a profound appreciation for the ordinary comforts of life. Choosing to spend time in solitude, with all its initial unease, is one of the most powerful modern forms of this ancient exercise. You are not seeking misery. You are building a callus on the mind, teaching yourself that you can withstand the itch of boredom and the pang of loneliness without breaking. Seneca, a man who knew immense luxury, was a staunch advocate for this practice. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He was training his mind to find its own comfort, independent of external circumstances. By willingly stepping into a state of lack, you prove to yourself that your peace is not held hostage by your environment. A practical way to apply this today is to schedule a digital Sabbath. For a few hours or even a full day, turn off all your devices. Do not use them for entertainment or distraction. Simply sit with the silence and with yourself. You will likely feel a restless urge to check for messages, to scroll, to fill the void with noise. This is the moment of training. By resisting that urge and simply observing the discomfort, you are performing a powerful repetition for your mental resilience. You are teaching your brain that this quiet is not a threat but a space. So this week, choose one small voluntary discomfort. It could be taking a cold shower for 1 minute, skipping a habitual snack, or spending your lunch break alone in a park without your phone. Do not do it to punish yourself. Do it as an experiment. Notice the initial resistance, and then notice the quiet strength that emerges on the other side. What new part of yourself do you meet when you willingly step into a little unease? Stoicism invites us to see our lives from the viewpoint of the cosmos. This cosmic perspective is not an abstract idea but a practical tool for mental freedom, revealing the true scale of our daily anxieties. To live according to nature in the Stoic sense means to align your actions with the rational, interconnected order of the entire universe, not just the small, noisy world of human affairs. This alignment often requires a deliberate step back into solitude, where the vastness can put our struggles into their proper, humble context. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this thought from the frontier, writing, "Remember how long you have been putting this off, and how many times you have been granted a period of grace by the gods and not used it. Now you must finally recognize the universe of which you are a part, and the governor of that universe of whom you constitute an emanation." He is reminding himself that he is a tiny, yet integral, part of a vast and ancient system. Your social status, your latest embarrassment, that cutting remark from a colleague, these are specks of dust in the grand arena of time and space. One of the most accessible ways to tap into this perspective is to simply go stargazing alone. Find a clear night away from the city lights and just look up. As your eyes adjust to the immensity above, feel the shift internally. The problem that felt so monumental just an hour ago, the worry that was tightening your chest, begins to loosen its grip. You are looking at light that has traveled for thousands of years to reach your eyes, at stars that were born and have died in the time it took for their final glow to arrive here. In the face of that cosmic timeline, how heavy can a missed deadline or a social slight truly be? The solitude is essential because it removes the human echo chamber. There is no one to validate your worry, no one to amplify your drama. There is only you and the silent, patient universe which puts on this magnificent display every single night, completely indifferent to the fleeting concerns of any one person. So take a mental journey for a moment. Bring to mind your single biggest worry right now. Hold it in your mind, feel its weight and its texture. Now, imagine you are floating far above the earth, looking down on the spinning blue marble from the quiet of space. See the continents, the oceans, the thin veil of atmosphere. Now, from that vantage point, look back at your worry. How large does it appear from there? What happens to its power over you when you view it from the silent, cosmic scale of a stargazer? Think of isolation not as a retreat, but as a strategic repositioning of your forces. A general does not withdraw his army because he is losing the battle. He does it to protect his core strength, to find a better vantage point, and to choose the next engagement on his own terms. This is the Stoic view of voluntary withdrawal from the noise of society. It is a purposeful act of conservation, saving your most vital resource, your focused energy, for the pursuits that align with your deepest values, for the cultivation of virtue itself. The Stoics prized right action above all else, and sometimes the most correct action is to temporarily step away from the fray. This is not passivity. It is the highest form of agency, the conscious choice to stop scattering your attention so you can gather it into a single, powerful beam. The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught this principle when he said, "Since every one of us is equipped with a soul and a body, we must take care of both, but much more of the soul." A strategic withdrawal is precisely that, superior care for the soul, creating the quiet necessary to tend to its needs without distraction. Consider a visionary leader who has guided their company for a decade. The daily demands have become a blur of meetings, emails, and putting out fires. They feel their original vision for the company fading beneath a mountain of operational details. So they make a radical decision. They announce a 3-month sabbatical, a complete withdrawal from the daily operations. During this time, they are not on vacation. They are in a state of deep reflection, reading, thinking, and reconnecting with the core problem they originally set out to solve. They are repositioning themselves, moving from being a reactive manager to returning as a purposeful leader with renewed clarity. This is not escapism. It is a strategic investment in their capacity to lead with wisdom. Now, look at your own life. Identify one area where you feel your energy is being constantly drained, where you are reacting more than you are acting. It could be a social circle, a commitment, or even a digital space. What would a tactical, temporary withdrawal from that single area look like, not as a permanent exit, but as a strategic repositioning to conserve your energy and refine your purpose? Stoicism teaches that the only real poverty is a poverty of character. When your treasure is measured in wisdom, courage, and self-respect, the fluctuating number of people in your social circle becomes irrelevant. Your inner wealth is a fortune that cannot be stolen by changing trends or lost through quiet weekends. It remains a constant, self-replenishing resource that makes you rich even when you are completely alone. The philosopher Epictetus, who owned almost nothing in terms of material goods, pointed directly to this truth. He asked his students, "Why do you ask how many books you possess? You have your learning from them. You do not own the words, you own the understanding." Your true possessions are not the external objects or even the external relationships, but the integrated wisdom and strength of character you build from them. A person rich in friends but poor in self-respect is ultimately bankrupt. A person with few companions but a deep well of inner integrity is truly wealthy. Consider the life of the philosopher Diogenes, who famously lived in a large ceramic jar and owned nothing but a cloak, a staff, and a wooden bowl. By the world's standards, he was the poorest of the poor, a man with no social standing to speak of. Yet when the most powerful man in the world, Alexander the Great, stood before him and offered to grant him any wish, Diogenes simply replied, "Stand out of my sunlight." His inner wealth was so immense that he felt no need to flatter the king or ask for a thing. He possessed a self-sufficiency that rendered the approval and company of others entirely optional. His solitude was not a state of lack, but a demonstration of his profound riches. So, pause for a moment and define what inner wealth means to you personally. What are the qualities of character, the pieces of integrated knowledge, or the quiet strengths that you would count as your real treasure, the fortune that no one can take from you? The discipline of assent is the Stoic gatekeeper of the mind. It stands at the doorway of your consciousness, carefully inspecting every impression that arrives before allowing it to enter and influence your inner world. This is the practice of pausing between a triggering event and your reaction to ask a simple, powerful question. Is this impression true? In the constant buzz of social life, this gatekeeper is often overwhelmed, forced to let in a flood of unchecked thoughts and judgments. Solitude provides the necessary quiet for this guardian to do its most vital work. It is the training ground where you learn to examine the beliefs you let into your mind without the pressure of an audience waiting for your response. The philosopher Epictetus gave clear instructions for this practice. He taught, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test." he was not telling us to become emotionless robots. He was teaching us to stop being swept away by the initial, often misleading, story our minds instantly create. A powerful modern application of this is to review your social media feeds after a period of intentional quiet. Sit in solitude for a few minutes, letting the mental noise settle. Then, open your feed not to consume but to observe. Watch the stream of images and updates as a detached analyst. Notice the impression that arises when you see a friend's vacation photo. Does it bring a genuine smile or a subtle pang of comparison? When you read a strong political opinion, do you feel an immediate surge of anger or agreement before you have even fully processed the argument? In the quiet, you can catch that initial impression and hold it up to the light. Is that photo truly evidence that your life is lacking, or is it just a single moment from someone else's story? Is that opinion an absolute truth or merely one perspective among many? This is the discipline of assent in action, the deliberate curation of your mental landscape. Your challenge is to catch just one automatic negative thought today. It might be the instant belief that a delayed reply to your text means you are being ignored, or the feeling of inadequacy when you see a colleague's success. The moment you feel that familiar sting, pause. Do not let the impression in unchallenged. Gently question its validity. What other, more generous or more accurate story could explain this same event? This small act of mental resistance practiced in the quiet spaces of your day is how you build an unshakable inner citadel. Everything in life is temporary, including our relationships. This is not a cynical statement, but a simple observation of nature, the same way we observe that autumn follows summer. Stoicism asks us to apply this clear-eyed view to the people who come and go in our lives. When we stop resisting this natural flow, a profound shift occurs. The fear of being alone loses its sting, and we can begin to appreciate each connection for what it is. A gift in its own time, without the desperate need to make it last forever. We stop clinging, and in that release, we find the freedom to enjoy both company and solitude with equal peace. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by courtiers and advisors, constantly reminded himself of this reality. He wrote, "Keep in mind that everything you love is of the nature of everything that exists. It will change, it will be transformed. Your loved ones will die, as will you." He was not being morbid. He was practicing a deep form of gratitude, savoring the presence of others precisely because he accepted it would not always be so. This acceptance is the very foundation that makes peaceful solitude possible. Think about a close friendship from your past, perhaps from school or a previous job. At the time, that bond felt unbreakable, a constant in your life, but then circumstances changed. You moved to different cities, your daily lives drifted apart, and the intense connection naturally softened. If you cling to the old form of that friendship, you might feel a sense of loss or bitterness. But if you can see it through the Stoic lens of impermanence, you can appreciate the role it played, the support it offered when you both needed it, without demanding that it remain unchanged. That relationship was a chapter, and its ending allowed for new chapters to begin. So, bring to mind one relationship in your own life that has changed form, that has faded or transformed. It could be a childhood friend, a former mentor, or a romantic partner from long ago. Instead of focusing on the loss, ask yourself this: what did that person teach you about yourself during the time your paths were aligned? The courage you found, the patience you learned, the joy you shared, these are the permanent gifts, the real treasures you carry forward, long after the specific connection has settled into memory. What is the one thing that, if you did it well, would make your life meaningful? A Stoic does not need to search a crowded room for the answer. The philosophy provides a profound and simplifying focus: to live with virtue, to act with reason, justice, courage, and self-discipline. This single internal purpose becomes your unwavering compass. When you know your true north, you no longer require a chorus of voices to tell you which way to walk. Your purpose provides its own direction and its own company, making the frantic search for external validation feel like a distraction you have outgrown. Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful formula for this very idea, writing, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice. And on freeing yourself from all other distractions. This is the freedom of a simple purpose. It is not about achieving one massive goal, but about bringing a specific quality of character to every single action, no matter how small." Think of a master woodworker in a quiet workshop, surrounded by the scent of cedar and oak. For hours each day, it is just them, their tools, and the emerging form of a piece of furniture. They are not lonely, they are in a deep dialogue with their craft. Their purpose is clear: to create something beautiful and structurally sound. This purpose dictates their focus, rewards their patience, and judges their progress by its own exacting standards. The opinion of a passing crowd is irrelevant. The satisfaction comes from the seamless joint, the smooth finish, the integrity of the work itself. Their solitude is not empty. It is filled with the rich presence of a meaningful pursuit. Take a moment now to find a quiet space in your mind. If you had to distill your core life purpose into one single sentence, not a job title or an achievement, but the essential quality of character you wish to embody, what would you write down? The Stoic sage is an ideal of perfect mental freedom. This figure represents the ultimate expression of a mind that has achieved complete self-sufficiency, a person whose happiness is so thoroughly internalized that it remains untouched by the chaos of external events. The sage does not need constant companionship, applause, or favorable circumstances to feel at peace. Their contentment is generated from within, a renewable resource that makes them psychologically immune to the whims of fortune. This is the final destination of the path we have been exploring, the point where walking alone is not a choice but a simple expression of a state of unshakable inner wealth. Seneca captures this imperturbable state beautifully when he writes, "What is the difference between a stone and the sage? The stone is not disturbed by adversity, but neither is it capable of joy." The sage is like a stone in his immunity to pain, but unlike it in that he is filled with joy. The sage is not numb or unfeeling. They experience a deep and lasting joy precisely because they have severed the link between their inner peace and the things they cannot control. Think of historical figures like Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years of imprisonment. While not a Stoic in the formal sense, his ability to maintain his dignity, his purpose, and even his capacity for forgiveness in the face of extreme isolation and hardship reflects a sage-like quality. He did not allow his external circumstances to dictate his internal state. His spirit remained free even while his body was confined, because his sense of worth and his commitment to his cause were independent of his environment. This is the power of self-sufficiency over dependency. If you could cultivate one quality of the Stoic sage within yourself, which would it be? Is it the unshakable calm in the face of chaos, the ability to find joy without external cause, or the profound self-respect that makes the opinion of others utterly irrelevant? The answer you are searching for outside is often already within you. We live in a culture that prizes constant consultation, where a difficult decision sends us immediately to friends, family, or a flood of online opinions. Stoicism offers a radical alternative, a deep trust in your own innate reasoning faculty. It suggests that the most reliable counsel does not come from an external committee, but from the quiet, considered voice you can only hear when you are truly alone with your thoughts. This is why chosen isolation becomes such a powerful resource, the essential workshop where you learn to access and trust your own wisdom. The Roman philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius pointed directly to this internal wellspring. He reminded himself, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." He was not dismissing the value of learning from others, but affirming that the final authority, the deepest well of solution, must be your own examined judgment. Imagine facing a significant career crossroads. The conventional response is to poll your entire network, gathering a dozen conflicting viewpoints that only amplify the noise. The Stoic approach would be different. Before seeking a single outside opinion, you would deliberately schedule an hour of complete solitude. You would sit with a notebook, not to list pros and cons, but to ask yourself foundational questions. What core values are truly important to me in my work? What fears are driving my hesitation? What does my most authentic self, free from the pressure to impress anyone, genuinely desire? In that quiet space, the static of others' expectations fades, and the signal of your own reasoning becomes clear. The solution may not appear fully formed, but the path to it will, because you have started from a place of self-trust rather than external dependency. Your challenge is to take one small problem you are currently facing, a minor conflict or a daily dilemma, and for just one full day, make a pact with yourself to not ask anyone for advice. Instead, carry the question with you in the quiet moments, during a walk, while washing dishes, in the few minutes before sleep. Turn it over in your own mind. Listen for the answer that emerges from your own digging. What unique shape does a solution take when it is forged entirely in the quiet workshop of your own consciousness? Memento Mori, remember you must die. This ancient Stoic practice moves from a philosophical idea to a visceral truth in the quiet of solitude. Alone, without an audience to perform for, this reminder ceases to be morbid and becomes the ultimate clarifier, a lens that brings your entire life into sharp, undeniable focus. It asks the most important question you will ever face if your time is limited: what is truly worthy of it? Seneca confronted this with unflinching honesty, writing, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We live as if we have all the time in the world, postponing our best intentions while fearing the very social judgments that will mean nothing in the end. Sitting with the reality of your own end by yourself strips away the trivial. The fear of missing a party, the anxiety over a critical comment, the endless pursuit of status, all of it suddenly feels weightless, like dust in a strong wind. Your attention is drawn inward to the legacy of your character, the quality of your relationships, and the work that gives your life meaning. A simple, tangible way to invite this reflection is to place a small object on your desk, a stone, a withered leaf, or even a replica of a skull. This is not a decoration of gloom, but a tool for focus. In a moment of solitude, let your eyes rest upon it. Let it ask you its silent question. Are you spending this day, this irreplaceable hour, on what you would defend with your final breath? So, in your next quiet moment, I invite you to sit with this thought. If you knew with certainty that you had just 1 year left to live, what one thing would you immediately stop doing? And what one thing would you finally, courageously begin? Not every connection is worth the cost of your peace of mind. The Stoics were not advocating for a life of cold detachment from everyone, but for a profound discernment in our attachments. They counseled us to weigh our relationships not on a scale of social obligation or fleeting pleasure, but on the simple, sober metric of whether they contribute to our virtue and our inner tranquility. A connection that consistently stirs up anxiety, jealousy, or anger is one that has failed this fundamental test. It is an unnecessary attachment, a weight that keeps your mind from its natural state of calm. Epictetus offered clear guidance on how to interact with the world without being chained to it. He advised, "I must die, I must be imprisoned, I must suffer exile. But must I die groaning? Must I whine as well? Can anyone prevent me from going into exile with a smile?" The core of his teaching is this: you cannot always control what happens to you, but you can absolutely decide what you become attached to. Enjoy the company of others, but do not be enslaved by your need for it. Appreciate the things you have, but do not let your happiness depend on their presence. A practical example of this is the difficult but liberating decision to distance yourself from a consistently negative acquaintance. This is not the person who is occasionally going through a hard time, but the one whose presence is a predictable drain, who seems to thrive on drama and pessimism. Every conversation leaves you feeling heavy and agitated. Applying the Stoic filter, you realize that your peace of mind is your responsibility. You have the power to choose not to subject yourself to that toxicity. This does not require a dramatic confrontation. It can be a gentle, gradual pulling back, a polite decline of invitations you know will cost you your equilibrium. This act is not mean-spirited. It is an act of self-respect, a declaration that your inner citadel is worth protecting. So bring to mind one relationship in your own life. It could be with a friend, a family member, or a colleague. Now evaluate it not with guilt or obligation, but with honest curiosity. Ask yourself, after I interact with this person, what is the true cost to my inner peace? Does this connection build me up, or does it quietly tear down the walls of my contentment? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This ancient maxim, often attributed to the Stoic philosopher Zeno, cuts straight to the heart of a profound psychological strength. In a world that often mistakes volume for value, the disciplined practice of silent observation becomes a superpower, and it is one that is meticulously honed in the quiet spaces of chosen solitude. When you remove the pressure to constantly contribute to the conversation, you unlock a different mode of engagement, one of pure, patient intake. Solitude trains you to become a true observer of the world, and more importantly, of yourself. You learn to gather data about human nature, about social dynamics, and about your own automatic reactions, all without the distorting filter of needing to immediately respond or perform. You are collecting the raw material of wisdom. Epictetus, with his focus on practical living, highlighted this virtue when he taught, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." The person who is always speaking, always reacting, has already decided they have the answers. The one who listens, who observes from a place of calm detachment, remains a perpetual student of life, open to its endless lessons. A simple and powerful way to practice this is through intentional people watching in a public park. Find a bench and settle in, not with a phone or a book, but with the sole intention of observing. Watch the way people walk, how they interact, the unspoken language of their posture and gestures. The key is to do this without an internal monologue of judgment or commentary. Do not label the hurried man as stressed or the laughing couple as carefree. Simply observe the facts of their behavior, as if you were a naturalist studying a fascinating ecosystem. In this exercise, you are not being antisocial. You are training your mind to see the world as it is, not as your biases and instant reactions insist it must be. You are building the muscle of patience and perception. So, your invitation is this: sometime in the next day, gift yourself 15 minutes of pure observation. Sit by a window or on a bench and just watch your environment. Let the sights and sounds wash over you without the need to form an opinion about any of it. Notice the urge to label, to critique, to narrate, and gently set it aside. What do you begin to see and hear and understand when you finally stop talking, even to yourself? Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. This simple definition holds a profound psychological challenge, one that the Stoics placed at the very center of a good life. To live with integrity is to have your actions perfectly aligned with your principles, creating a life free from the internal friction of hypocrisy. And this unwavering alignment, this commitment to a personal moral compass, is precisely what often requires the courage to stand apart from the group, to embrace a temporary but necessary isolation. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, which for a rational being means living by the clear, consistent light of reason and virtue, not by the flickering shadows of popular opinion. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured the essence of this consistency when he wrote, "Let your virtues contend with one another for the prize of your approval." He urges us to be our own most demanding judge, to prize the harmony between our words and our deeds above any external trophy or applause. When your own approval is the most difficult to earn and the most valued to receive, the approval of the crowd loses its power to dictate your choices. Consider a common workplace scenario. The lunchroom conversation turns, as it often does, to gossip about a colleague who is not present. The easy, inclusive path is to nod along, to offer a small, confirming comment, to become part of the collective murmur. But the person with cultivated integrity sees this for what it is, a test of their principles. They know that true character is built in these small, unseen moments. So they make a quiet but firm choice. They might simply change the subject, or they might say, "I do not feel comfortable discussing someone who is not here to speak for themselves." In that instant, they choose integrity over inclusion. The social temperature in the room may drop momentarily. They might feel a brief chill of exclusion. But they have passed their own internal test. They have reinforced the walls of their inner citadel and preserved their self-respect, a currency far more valuable than fleeting social credit. So here is a challenge for you, a question to sit with in a moment of quiet honesty. Identify one principle you hold dear, one core value about honesty, kindness, or fairness. Now imagine a situation where upholding that value would put you at odds with your friends, your family, or your colleagues. It does not have to be a grand, dramatic stand. It could be as simple as refusing to laugh at a cruel joke or returning the extra change a cashier mistakenly gave you. What is that one principle you would defend, even if it meant you had to stand completely alone? Your emotional state should not be held hostage by the actions of others. This is the ultimate liberation Stoicism offers, a profound shift from emotional dependency to unshakable self-sufficiency. When you realize your happiness is your own responsibility to cultivate, not a prize others can grant or withhold, the entire dynamic of your relationships transforms. You stop waiting for permission to be content. The philosopher Epictetus laid out this truth with stark clarity, reminding us, it is not things that disturb people, but their judgments about things. For example, death is nothing terrible, or else it would have seemed so to Socrates. Rather, the terror is in our judgment that death is terrible. Our good and our evil, our peace and our turmoil, reside not in the world around us, but within the private judgments of our own minds. This internal locus of control is what makes solitude a state of profound freedom. You are not missing out on the emotional fuel of others. You are generating your own sustainable energy from within. A powerful way to practice this is after you accomplish something meaningful. Instead of immediately sharing the news to gather likes and congratulatory comments, sit with the achievement in silence for a day. Let the satisfaction of a job well done come from your own acknowledgement. Feel the quiet pride that arises from meeting your own standards, from knowing you persevered and created something of value. This is not about rejecting the warmth of shared joy, but about ensuring your joy does not depend on it. That internal validation becomes a stable foundation, a personal wellspring of contentment that no one can poison or take away. Think back to a moment, however small, when you felt a genuine, unforced happiness entirely on your own terms. Perhaps it was the simple pleasure of finishing a book, the quiet awe of a sunset walk, or the deep satisfaction of solving a difficult problem by yourself. In that moment, you were not a beggar for emotional scraps. You were the sole architect of your peace. What did that self-generated happiness feel like, and how can you invite more of it into your life? When it comes to social interaction, how much is enough for you? The Stoics understood that a flourishing life requires an understanding of limits, not just with money or food, but with our most precious resource, our attention. A strong mind is not anti-social, but it is acutely self-aware. It recognizes the point of social saturation, that moment when the buzz of conversation ceases to energize and begins to drain, when the value of further interaction diminishes. This is not a failure of sociability, but a triumph of self-knowledge. It is the wisdom of knowing you are full and choosing to stop eating at the banquet of other people's company. The philosopher Musonius Rufus advised moderation in all things, stating that we should avoid excess, for in all things there is a due measure. This includes our social lives. Knowing your personal due measure is a form of empowerment, a declaration that your inner peace is more valuable than the appearance of being endlessly available. Picture yourself at a lively gathering. The laughter is genuine, the connections are warm, but you feel a subtle internal shift. The noise starts to feel heavy, and your responses become a little less spontaneous. The wise Stoic move is not to push through the fatigue out of obligation, but to honor that signal. You quietly thank your host, slip out into the cool night air, and return home to a restorative silence. You are not leaving something behind, you are returning to yourself. This act is a practical application of knowing what is enough. You have taken what you needed from the social exchange, and you withdraw not with a sense of missing out, but with a sense of completeness. So, in the quiet of your own thoughts, define that balance for yourself. What does your ideal week look like in terms of social nourishment and solitary reflection? Is your current rhythm leaving you energized or consistently depleted? Time and attention are your most non-renewable resources. Once a moment is spent, it is gone forever, and the focus you give it cannot be reclaimed. Every conversation you feel obligated to have, every social event you attend out of mere habit, and every digital notification you answer, each of these withdraws a small tax from your finite account of life. Stoic wisdom asks us to become rigorous accountants of this precious currency, spending it only on what truly aligns with our virtue and our purpose, and this often requires the deliberate, quiet act of reclaiming it from the demands of others. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in his letters on the shortness of life, confronted this with startling clarity. He wrote, "You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. You don't notice how much time has already passed, but squander it as though you had a full and overflowing supply, though all the while that very day which you are devoting to somebody or something may be your last." He is not urging a life of panic, but one of profound intention, where you guard your hours as fiercely as you would guard a treasure chest, because that is precisely what they are. Consider a practical exercise, an attention audit for your own life. For 1 week, carry a small notebook or use a notes app to simply log how you spend your social energy. Do not judge it yet, just observe. Tally the hours spent in conversations that left you feeling drained, the minutes lost to scrolling through feeds filled with other people's curated lives, the evenings given to events you felt you should attend rather than those you genuinely wanted to. At the end of the week, look at the total, then ask the single most important question: was this expenditure well spent? Did it build your inner citadel, or did it quietly erode its walls? This is not about becoming antisocial, but about becoming selective, choosing depth and meaning over volume and noise. So, take a quiet moment and make a simple calculation. How many hours did you give to social interactions last week? And of that total, how many of those hours can you honestly say were an investment in your character, rather than a withdrawal from your peace? The quiet path of chosen isolation is a mosaic built from the core principles of Stoic wisdom. It begins with the inner citadel, that private fortress of the mind where your truest self resides, immune to external chaos. It is guided by the dichotomy of control, a mental sieve that separates the noise of what you cannot change from the essential work of what you can. This entire journey is fueled by emotional self-sufficiency, the profound realization that your peace is a treasure you generate from within, not a prize others can grant or withhold. Walking alone from this perspective is the ultimate act of self-possession. It is a declaration that your focus and your energy are too precious to be scattered by every social wind. This is not a rejection of humanity, but a deep commitment to cultivating the inner resources that allow you to engage with the world from a place of strength, not dependency. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius left us a final, resonant thought on this inner strength, writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This is the quiet power behind the strong mind that walks alone, not in bitterness but in purposeful peace. So as we conclude, I leave you with one simple, reflective question. What is the one small step you can take this week to cultivate a stronger, more independent mind? Perhaps it is scheduling 1 hour of digital silence, or simply pausing to question one automatic judgment. If this exploration of Stoic wisdom has been valuable for you, consider subscribing to continue the journey of applying these ancient principles to the complexities of modern life.